All right, today we're going to go over the walk cycle stuff. First, the sheet. Walk cycle due November 14th. This shouldn't take us very long, especially our next project after this is animation. And then the next project after that is a pickup. And then we have a small demo reel thing, and then we're done. Okay, we literally have like 4 or 5 weeks left of class. Utilizing a character rig to animate a walk cycle. That's the whole goal of this one. Use the rig you set up before to animate the walk cycle. Use the character sets that we set up so you can do the head, upper body, and lower body movements all separated. Loop the cycle 10 times. So we want to create a cycle and verify that it definitely is a cycle and not just like a one-off shot. This is not going to be the same thing as if we were doing a movie and I wanted my character to actually like move forward across the room. This is more for like a video game. So if we had a looping cycle in a video game, that's what this would be used for. You can render either a 180 turntable walk cycle or you can do a composite front and side view. So this is what a turntable would look like. I think that's one. So you can see as the character is walking, the camera is kind of wrapping around them. Okay, we don't want to go all the way around. The back side of characters are typically like a weird thing to show for such a long time. So we would just go from like the left side of the body to the right or the right to the left, however you want to attack that. Okay, see it's like an awkward time to be in the back of this. I want to see just the front of that. There we go. Okay, so you just need 180, this side to that side. The other way you can do this is a 3D, a side by side. I just had it up. So you see this is the character walking here, and that is the character walking there. For the first one, guess how many cameras you need? One. For this one, guess how many cameras you need? Two. You could. You can't duplicate him in turn, but you could turn him. But if you want to render both cameras at the same time, then you could have one camera facing front, one camera facing side, set the render button, and then let it do all of its stuff. That way you don't have to manually rotate it and then do it. Oh, you're talking about having one over here next to it. Yeah. Oh, that's another way to do it, I guess. I've never done it that way. I see what you're saying. You couldn't just duplicate it, though, because you need to make sure the walk cycle is still there. You have to probably import them again and have 2 copies right there, and then try that. I don't know. Typically, I render it like from the front view and from the side view, and then just bring it together in Photoshop and then put them together. So there's actually like a seam typically down the middle. Okay. So either way you want to render it out is up to you. Ensure good lighting and flow of your character's movements. The turn-ins for this will be an animation of the walk cycle movie, 960 by 540, and 8 possible points. So that will be printed out and put inside the folder for you to forget about. This is what a student's walk cycle looked like last semester. Okay, you can see it's a cycle, you can see it's over and over again. If we didn't have an actual cycle, part of Andy's legs or arms or whatever would start getting further and further away every time it loops. Yes, sir.
So for this one, it's, once again, you're just going to use the graph editor and just do it infinite?
Nope. We're going to use a tracks editor, which is a much easier way to do it because we have a lot more control over it. Okay, so that'll be one of the new things that we play with in this one. So this is my ready to pose character. So this has all of the basic stuff that we had before. It has all my lights in here, all my textures are set up, my character sets are down here. This is the thing that we need to use. I'm going to start off with the lower body, and I'm going to break it up. I'm going to say lower body first, then upper body, and then the head. Typically the head, we don't have a whole lot of stuff happening with it. Maybe it moves a little bit, but we don't want to have too much movement because it's a cycle. Let's say that we had Andy turn his head to the side, then every time Andy moves, it's going to turn his head to the side. It's looking funky. I'm also going to switch to, let's say, a side view. And make sure my Andy mesh is not selectable. Yes, there we go. I'm going to give myself an appropriate amount of frames. So let's say 60 frames here. There's nothing wrong, especially with this method, of animating it too long. So this is 2 seconds for basically like 2 steps. That's way too long. And then we can condense it later, which you'll see, okay? This way we just have nice math when we're doing it. Which I know Autumn likes math. All right, so I'm gonna go to frame 0. It should be frame 1. I'm not sure why I'm frame 0. There we go, frame 1. And I'm going to hit S to set my key. Oops, make sure I'm actually on frame 1. There we go, S to set my key. Because I'm on the lower body character set, all the stuff I'm gonna be utilizing for the lower body is part of that character set. When I hit S, everything for the lower body gets keyed. Now I just did that without actually moving anything, so I need to get a reference so that I have something to go by. So let's go here. Let's go to character walk cycle. And there's one by Idle Worm. They used to have a website, he got rid of it. Oops. That was really well done. It was like a whole like series of stuff. That one there. This is the one I like to pull up because it gives you the main poses of a walk cycle, okay? So this is my first pose. That's what Andy needs to look like in this pose. A couple things to pay attention to is the position of the head. If the head's lower, typically the hips are going to be lower too, okay? So the head is about midline here, and then it dips down, and then it goes back, and then it comes up, and then it goes back down, then it goes back down, and then up again, okay? So this is like a middle pose here. This back leg is bent. This front leg is probably bent a little bit. I'm ignoring the upper part of the body. If I look at the hips, I like to have that pose there. I guess look at this. If we look at the hips, whichever hip is, or whichever foot is forward, the hips are going to be twisted that way, okay? So let's get Andy into position. Doesn't matter which foot I start off with, so I'm just going to put one of these feet forward. I'm going to put the main hip control forward like so. And looking at that image, you'll see this one he's on his heel, this one he's on his the ball of his foot. So I know this one should be in the ball of his foot. I'm going to use foot roll, I believe is the one. Yes, foot roll. And then this one is cool because if I go to foot roll the other way, it actually goes to the heel. So it actually is an easy way for me to transition between the two poses that the foot typically takes on. Some rigs don't have that, so if you picked a different rig, your rig may be different. You'll notice... I do, don't I? Yep. There we go. That makes more sense. There we go. I got to stop talking at the same time that I'm working. Much better. Okay. Your walk cycle, your controls are different, so obviously you want to know what controls you're going to use for yours. As I'm doing this, I'm not also using rotation. Like some people will forget that they're using foot roll, and then they'll jump to rotation, which is now going to put the foot's position in a weird spot because this is no longer flat with the foot, even though it's kind of doing the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to use foot roll, not going to use the rotation. The hips, like I said, are going to be a little bit lower, which it looks like they are. Also look that the hips are actually a bit forward of the back. It's not perfectly centered. It's a bit more forward. Okay, a bit, not much. There we go. And like I said before, the hips are typically rotated towards that direction. I'm going to round this to 20. And then I need to take the knees and make sure they're facing forward as well. Now I'm actually going to force them or face them a little bit outward because that's what your knees do. And I'm also going to make this rotate a little bit outward. Give myself a little bit of room there. This one should be out a little bit like that. Good. Okay. So that looks pretty decent. If I screw up, no big deal fixing it. Like that is definitely too close to that. Scoot that over some. Okay. All right. So you'll see why the poses are important in your initial assignment because this is all it is. It's posing it at the beginning of the walk cycle, in the middle, at the end, and then it'll transition between them pretty much for us. Okay. So now I'm going to hit S, and there's my first pose. So that's what Andy looks like when Andy is in this pose here. Again, just looking at the legs. Now, if I look at this whole lineup here, this is called the contact pose. If I jump to the middle, you'll see this is also a contact pose, but the feet are swapped. And if I go to the very end, it's a contact pose just like the very first one. So typically whatever happens at the start is going to happen at the end. So I'm just going to jump to the end and hit S on that as well. Now I can go to 30 and I'll just swap the feet. So this foot will come forward. This foot will go back. If you're trying to line it up perfectly, let me hit undo. I'm going to go into my side view. I'm going to turn my grid on. And I actually can just do this. That works. Okay, so I just kind of resize my view so that the curves are just inside it. So now I can just move this curve to that one. And grab this curve and move it to that one. Then when I swap the foot roll to the other direction, and I swap this one to the other direction, and then I go into the hips, I just make this a -20. I take the knee controls, I move them over to the other sides, this way and that way. Make sure the feet are still rotated out, which they are, and then set a key. Okay, so I've done 2 poses and I've set 3 keyframes. So now we can kind of look at this and see what it looks like. Okay, now what we should get is if you look at Andy's feet, they're pretty much sliding along the ground. And that's going to be our basic timing for this when we do it. We're looking at the hips, seeing how the hips are moving back and forth. Making sure we have a good distance there, making sure Andy feels like he's ahead of it. He does. Okay, good. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the distance again. So first I set this pose, then that one, then I cut the distance between them and got that one. So I'm going to cut it again and get this one, which is the passing pose. So whichever foot is on the ground here, which is going to be that one, the other foot is going to start lifting off. We're at the same head height, so the hips aren't moving. So I'm going to go to 15. That's why I said the math works out perfect, because half of 30 is 15. And I'm going to try to remember which foot is moving. That one. Okay. So this foot is going to come up. It's going to be the knees a bit forward, the foot's facing down. There we go. So I'm going to reset this to 0. And this is where I will use rotate, because I'm actually needing to rotate the foot. This should be a little bit forward. I may need to scoot Andy up just a bit. Go. And this foot needs to be flat on the ground, like that. Okay. So we'll set a key here, and then we'll see what this looks like. So you'll see how this is just kind of like, it's guiding us pretty much like right there, like that's just a couple keyframes and we got that initial step. Now I'll go to the middle of this one, which is 45, and do the same thing in the other one. So I'll grab this foot, lift it up, 0 this out, a little bit of rotation here. Hips come up just a little bit. This foot goes flat. And set a key. Now again, I'm going to hit play and then make sure everything is still looking good. Andy's a little bit bow-legged. We'll fix that. I'll fix all that in the graph editor afterwards. Yeah, really far. Okay. Now let's do this cutting in half again. So we got passing, so now we'll do recoil. Recoil, this front foot is step down, the back foot is leaving the ground. So we'll go to about 7 or 8, either one doesn't matter. I'm going to push this down a little bit. This foot is at 0. A little bit of rotation here. This foot should be at 0 also. And set a key. Okay, so now we have this. And he's stepping down. I think I need to step down further, so let's go further. Okay, that's good. And then I'll do the same thing here. So right where Andy's stepping, this should be at 0. This should be at 0. This is rotated slightly. hips are going to come down. There we go. Cool. Then we'll cut it again. There's high point, so I cut it somewhere in the middle here, 22, 23. I'm going to raise Andy up. This foot's going to come here and back, and no foot roll there, and a little bit of rotation. And we do have a little bit of this foot here, so I'm going to leave that exactly where that is. That's good. All right, same thing on this side. Let's go to about there. Let's lift up the hips. Let's put that to 0, rotate it. You want to be careful that you don't overextend the hips. Sometimes people will go a little bit too far on the hips coming up. And when you do that, the leg will extend, like it'll go all the way straight, and you'll get this like popping motion. So that as Andy's walking, you'll actually see like the knee like locks, and then it looks weird. Oops. Cancel, don't save. I should probably save as, so I don't screw up that one. Walk cycle. There we go. All right, so now I'll hit play, and then this is where we are at. So now Andy definitely has a weird stutter on her foot. So let's see, this comes up. All right, so I think this one probably just needs to be back a bit further. Maybe rotated some. No, maybe not that far. And do the same thing here. See, that foot just gets stuck, and so it's just a matter of finding the right spot for it so it doesn't look like it's getting stuck at all. All right, still a little sticky, but we will correct it. Cool. All right, so now it's tweaking time. So let's go to the graph editor. And what I'm going to do is deselect everything. There we go. Now only the stuff that I have in my character set will automatically get populated here, which is again another nice feature because this is the stuff that we've animated. Some of these have no animation on it. So this is right toe roll. I didn't do anything with that. There's no animation. Don't delete them because it'll make it go away forever. Just leave them alone. This is the right foot roll. So what I'm going to do is anywhere I have a keyframe I don't need in something that's animated, I'm going to delete it. Okay, and you'll see it's just a subtle thing, but it'll help smooth that graph out some. Let's go to the next one. Nothing, nothing. Right here? Yeah, I can delete that too. That's it. There, there. All of these, nice and smooth. Same thing here. Oops. Too aggressive with my clicks. There we go. That, yes, yes. Oh, there it is. See it? That's that weird spot. So now, if that's gone, that should help smooth that out. Now this one is going to be a little bit tricky. I need this translate Y to be in a certain spot. If I delete these, watch how much that changes. Okay, it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was. All right, so that's probably not going to be too much of an issue. If it was pretty drastic, like let's say it went that far down, I'd probably keep one of those just so it stayed in place. Oops, another one, really weird. Now this might cause some damage, and we can go through and kind of correct it. I don't think I deleted those ones on here. But it's a starting point. Just like all of our other animations, we try to do these layering processes so that our stuff appears nice and smooth. This one definitely will change it a whole lot, so I'm going to keep that one there. These ones probably won't. Yeah, that's good. That's good, good. That one will change it a lot. I might not need it, so I'm going to just change that. Once you know the attribute too, like rotate, he shouldn't have like a weird like rotation to his foot, right? It should be nice and smooth. So I know like, okay, regardless, it should be smooth, so I'm going to delete it. There we go, and that's good. Okay. So now let's take a rewind and stuff, hit play. And you'll see we don't get that weird stuttering anymore with the foot. We've smoothed out that part of it. Now I can adjust things like, okay, the feet are maybe too far out, or maybe it's the knees that are too far out. So let's go back to the graph editor. I'm going to change my view here. Panels, saved layouts, and there's one that's a perspective and the graph. Now the hypergraph. There it is. I don't really need the outliner right now, so we can just close that group. Turn the grid off. All right. Okay, so this is good enough. I like to have more screen space, but whatever. These controls here, the ones that are moving the feet in and out, are the foot controls, these leg controls, and they should be the translate X. So this is translate X. I'm going to grab the entire thing, hold down Shift, and middle drag. And you can see how it moves the entire thing. It's basically just like offsetting the entire animation. So I'm going to look at that and see if I need to adjust its position here maybe. Yep, there we go. So I'm looking at that back foot. I'm going to just adjust that a little bit more. Let's go to where it looks really bow-legged like that. There we go. All right, so I'm going to bring that in. Maybe I'll grab this and that. So this is the foot and the knee. It's the wrong knee though. Spine root. Let's rotate. That's that one, yes. And it's that one. There we go. Okay. So now I can move these over a little bit more, bringing them closer together, so Andy's not so far apart. And I'll do the same thing with the other one. So this was left, so I'll grab right. That's right. That's right. And I'll bring those closer together. There we go. Much better. No more crazy bow-legged walking. Cool. All right. So that works pretty good. If Andy's feet were rotated too far out, I can grab those rotates, bring them in, whatever I need to do. Now I'm going to do the arms. So I'm going to switch my character set to upper body. I'm going to change how these are animated. The arm animation for this, basically the shoulders are going to rotate, the spine rotates, and the arms rotate. But there's not a whole lot of other stuff going on. So I don't need like all the finger controls. So I'm going to switch this to FK, which it is. I'm going to put the hands in a good resting position because I don't want to have to go back and reset all these keyframes. It's an angry resting position. Let's not do that. Pull the thumb in, and all spread, we'll pull that in. And maybe we'll bend the fingers just slightly just so it feels a little bit more relaxed. That's too much. Too much spread. There we go. That feels better. I'm going to take this down here. I haven't set any keyframes yet. I'm just kind of getting this in that position. Whichever leg is forward. Okay, so if the right leg is forward, the left arm will be forward. So I'll pull that forward. Also, we want the spine to be rotated, so I'm going to grab all three spine rotators and rotate that. I'm also going to rotate the collarbone down a little bit, forward a little bit. further out. Come on, there, there. All right, so that's good for that arm. Now let's set this one. And I'm doing the same thing. So it's just a mirror image of what the other one was doing. A little bit of rotation. Thumb's kind of tucked. There, spread in, cupped a little bit. I'm on FK. This shoulder will be rotated back a bit. This will be down some more. Notice how I'm going through, kind of rotating around the view just to see what's going to look best. This is very exaggerated, so keep that in mind. All right, so that looks pretty good that way. I think Andy probably needs to come forward a little bit more. All right, so I'm at frame 1. I'm going to set a key. I'm going to go to frame 60, set a key, and then I'm going to go to frame 30 and swap it around. So you'll see it looks really weird here because her same side is forward. So I'll go to this, make these positive. And pretty much if you just kind of look at what the other one was doing and just mimic that, you should be good. Now back. This one's going to be forward. Down some, this looks like this. And you can see how much I'm kind of bouncing around trying to grab the elbow, the shoulder. And this is much easier to do when you don't have an IK solution because it's just rotating. That's all it is. Just rotating the shoulder and tweaking some of these other positions. Go. So now we'll set a key. Yep. And then let's take a look and see what this looks like. So now we have the arms moving. It looks like the right arm goes up a little bit higher, and I like how far up that goes. So I'm going to make this one go up a bit further. So I'll set a key here. I'll middle click at 60, set a key. There we go. Cool. And then I'm just going to play with the head. If I go to a front view or side view or whatever, switch this to the head. Oops, come on. Nope. Make sure nothing is selected. Yes, there we go. I'm not sure why I have stuff already on my head layer. Oh, my sky dome is somehow on that. Let's just delete the sky dome keyframes. Okay. I'm just going to take the neck and this head control and just rotate it so that Andy's always looking straight ahead. So that's pretty close to what I need. Set a key at 1, set a key at 60, go to frame 30, rotate it forward, set a key there, and then test it out. Cool. All right, so the walk cycle is pretty much done. Okay, I'm going to jump through my graph editor real quick and just double check all my stuff. So here's all my head controls. Whatever the start of this is, the end should also be the same thing. That's how I'm ensuring that I have a loop. If I drag on this one and it says 8.435, this one should also say 8.435. If it doesn't, I'll fix it. There's only a couple attributes that we even keyframed, so it's very easy on the head to do exactly that. For the upper body, let's go there. A lot of keyframes going on. Nothing really happening here as far as animation, nothing happening here for animation. All of it's down in this area. So I'll grab a section at a time. And it's auto framing, which is awesome because that way I don't have to hit the F key. And I can just verify what I'm looking at. Okay, nothing crazy here. Nice and smooth. These look like they're even. They should be. Same thing there. So you want to go through and make sure there's nothing wonky or crazy about this. And then you can go through and adjust that. So cool. So my feet, my hands, or my upper body, lower body, and head are all on this loop. So now I need to actually make it into something I can use. So typically if you're working for a video game, you would create hundreds of these loops. So for every character you have, you would make a walk cycle, a run cycle, a standing cycle. Even though it sounds silly, there is like a mulling around cycle. You may even have like a slow walk to fast run cycle that you do. Transition ones. Every character that's in a game, every cycle, every animation they do, they have an animation for it. They jump, there's a jump cycle. They run, there's a run cycle. Okay. So I'm going to go to animation. I'm going to go to tracks editor. And this is where we get to do the cool stuff. I'm going to switch this to lower body first. I'll say create animation clip, and I'll call this lower body. I'm going to say don't include hierarchy. I just want the exact one that I have, and I shouldn't need to include sub-characters in the clip. I don't want to leave keys in timeline. I want to put it in the tracks editor and visor, animation curve, absolute, yes. Okay, so now what that does, it creates a clip under here called lower body. It starts off at frame 1 and it goes to frame 60, and this is my animation. Basically the entire animation I did is like locked into this little node. I'll switch this to upper body. I'll do the same thing, animation clip, same settings except for upper body. And there's upper body, I can verify that it's there. I'll go to head, create clip, head, and then there's head. Okay, so there we go. If I make more frames, let's say 150 or 300 or whatever it is, I hit play, and he stops right at 60. That's as long as my animation was, that's it. If I click on any of these things, you'll see I don't have keyframes down here. If I go to the graph editor, I won't see keyframes in here. All those keyframes that I set are now inside of these areas. I don't even need to have this on. I'm just going to hit none. I don't think that'll destroy anything. Nope. And now I'm going to grab all three of these. Oops, I'm going to deselect first. Grab all three of these, and then I'm going to say I want to post cycle this 10 times. So now what it's going to do is it's going to take this animation that I have and loop it 10 times. So now I can turn that off, I hit play, and you'll see my cycle just keeps going over and over and over again. Okay, now let's say that I wanted this to go faster. Right now it's going pretty slow. I go to scale and I type in 0.25. And so now I have more of a hurried walk. Maybe 0.4 would be more appropriate. What speed are we going here? Let's try 0.6. There we go. So all this is doing is it's taking that clip and allowing us to change the speed of it basically in one shot. And what's neat about this is in some instances, where's my tracks editor again? There it is. I can make clips inside here. So as I'm changing this to post cycling 1 or 0 or whatever, it adds these. As I change the scale here, it does that. I can actually create one clip of him walking slow and then transition it to a clip of him walking fast. And Andy will actually walk fast. I can have a clip of him walking up one step and have that cycle and have him walk up a bunch of steps. Okay, so it's pretty neat how this tracks editor works. And once we have this whole thing set up, okay, this is not going to be a perfect, this is a video game type animation that we're going to see. I can take this thing, this circle here, which I haven't touched, haven't animated at all, and I'm going to animate it. So if I just set a keyframe here, I scooch up to, let's say, 300. There we go. And then I hit play. All right, let's get rid of the ease in on that. There we go. There we go. So now we have Andy walking somewhere if we needed to. Okay, like I said, it's a video game character. Her feet are sliding. It doesn't matter for this type of thing. I could spend a little bit more time trying to get the exact amount of movement we should have. So I'm going to go back to the beginning here. And as I do one cycle, that foot should stay pretty still. So that tells me that Andy is maybe moving a little bit too slow. Let's go to our graph editor. Let's grab this. And it's off screen, so you just have to trust me. I'm just going to move this. It's lined up better. There you go. Still a little bit of slip. It'll still be slippery no matter what. There we go. It's better. Adjust it a little bit more. Definitely better than it was. Okay. Now, there's also a tool under animation and under constrain. Oops. I lied. Where did they move it to? Playback, randomize. No. It's not under deform. Motion path, molecular. All right, where did they move it? Edit, turntable goes. Oh, there it is, redirect. I was looking for something different. All right, so redirect. So what this allows us to do is I'm going to set this up. So Andy's going to be walking, and Andy's going to turn right here. So I'm going to put this at the ball of Andy's foot. And I'm just going to set a keyframe here on its rotation. I'm going to go up so many frames. Like that. Again, this is not going to be perfect, but it'll be good enough. And I rotate this 90 degrees or 45 degrees or whatever it is, set more keyframes. And now we'll basically have Andy do this like little turntable walk, okay? And for each one of these that I wanted Andy to turn and then go a different direction, I would just create another one and then animate that one doing whatever, okay? Now, this is not part of the assignment as far as doing that. I just want you to see it because it's important for you to see these things because at some point you may need them. I'm going to delete the keyframes here. There we go. So now we just have our cycle. So now I have Andy looping 10 times. Okay, so if we look at our InDesign file, that was one of our things, loop 10 times. Now we can do a side-by-side, so you can do a camera from this angle and a camera from that angle rendered out. Put those into After Effects and then use a mask to show each one. Typically for this, I'll show you how I have this set up. I'll make 2 new cameras. I'll call this front ren. And my other one will be called side ren. And I'm going to go to my layouts and do a 2 side-by-side. So if this one is front ren, which it says down here, this one is side render. I'm going to turn my render screens on. I'm going to put a ground plane in here. Make sure your Andy isn't floating. People spend 13, 14 hours rendering it out, and then Andy turns out to be floating. We don't want that. Yeah, well, we've all done it. See, Jenna. So now I have my front, which is the actual front view of Andy. There we go. And then I have the side view, which is the side view of Andy. My render settings, The default is 640 by 480, so I need to make sure I reset this to 960 by 540. I'm using Arnold. I'm not sure why Maya software defaulted there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the side view of Andy on the side of this screen and the front view of Andy on the side of this screen. And then I'm going to line up where these grounds are. So just like that. That's pretty close. And I'll zoom out just a touch in case I need to adjust anything.
How did you move the ground? Did you move the ground up and down, or were you just
I initially moved it up and down to get it in position. Now I'm just rotating the camera. Okay, so that's how I'm getting the ground to be lined up straight across. So now when I render out these two cameras, Andy's already positioned on the front, on the left side in the front view, and the right side of the side view. So when I go into After Effects, I put the two layers on top of each other, mask one of them off, so I can only see the other one. When I render this, I'm going to delete the file name prefix. I'll call this Andy Walk. I'll put an underscore, and then I'll right-click and say Insert Camera Name. So when this renders out, it'll actually call the renders Andy Walk Cycle underscore front ren, and then Andy Walk Cycle underscore side ren. That way, we render out both cameras at the same time, and we don't have to worry about renaming them, because that Maya will obviously overwrite it. Same settings as before, name.number.extension. How far does this go? Let's go back to our tracks editor and see how long 10 cycles is. Andy list auto load. There we go. 390. There we go. So this will go to 390. This doesn't matter here because it'll pick it up in the other one. We'll have to set something else up. Arnold renderer, obviously change our settings so that they look nice. I would throw some motion blur on this. End of frame. That's good. All right, that's plenty good there. I'm going to go through my cameras and just verify which ones are renderable. Anytime I render multiple cameras, I need to check this box inside of my rendering settings that says all render enabled cameras. So if perspective is enabled, it'll render perspective. I don't want that. If side view is enabled, look at all these. It might render one of those other ones. So I'm just going to go through each one of these cameras, go to output settings, and turn off renderable. Because I don't want to render the top, the front, the side, or the other perspective. I only want to render these two. Yeah, those two weren't even on, so I wouldn't have even rendered those two that I need. Okay, so those two are on. So now when I hit the click that on, render sequence, it'll automatically render both of those cameras frames 1 through 390. So I can set it and then leave it alone. If I'm going to do a turntable, I'll make a new camera, go here. You can stylize this, kind of however you want, but this is how I like to do it. I'm going to hide the ground because I don't really like the ground in there for this right now. Make sure Andy's foot doesn't go through the ground. Make sure Andy's not floating. All right, so I'm going to go here. So this should be right there. Ooh, look at that. Andy's foot does go through the ground. That's a bad thing. So I need to fix that. Remember I said in the graph editor that nothing shows up? Okay, so I have to go to the tracks editor first, click on the lower body, and then it'll show me the graph for the lower body. And then I can grab the feet. The only sucky thing is you lose the coloring, so they're all like purple now. And I need to find, translate Y for the foot. There it is. That was the wrong foot. Let's go to the other foot. Translate Y is there, yes. Where's the other one? IK leg, yes, yeah, translate Y. Oh, there it is, way down here. I'm just going to take this and maybe just adjust the angle of that. There we go. The other foot does a similar thing to it, so I'm just going to grab that one's translate Y and just adjust that one as well. I need to break the handle there and then do that. Cool. I'll verify that we're definitely not going through the ground. Awesome. All right, so here's my turntable. So I want to make sure Andy's pretty centered. Even though this is the center of my scene, I think this is more sensical if I put it in the center of Andy there. Right there is perfect. Okay. Don't spend a lot of time rendering out stuff if something in it looks like garbage. So Andy in this scene looks pretty good, nice and smooth, good textures, lighting, whatever. But this cylinder I just dropped in here is pretty ugly. It's pretty faceted, and typically people will pay attention to those things more than your walk cycle. So I'm going to go to my edges, double click it, hold down shift and right click, and then go to bevel edge. And then I'll just add a little bit of a bevel, a couple segments, go to face mode. I'm going to delete all the faces down here, so I'm going to hold tab and click and drag these faces and delete. So now when I go back to object mode and hit 3 on here, that's a nice smooth turntable that Andy's then walking on. Cool. So now I can add my ground. And now I can scale this up. And again, I scale things up pretty huge because I don't want people to see the seams of that. I want it to be pretty obvious of what I'm looking at. Let's turn that on for a second. All right, so that should be pretty good like that. My lighting in the scene is pretty standard, kind of washed out like this. Maybe I want to do something a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more drastic with this. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe I'll take my sky dome down to 0.5-ish, go to my Arnold lights, make an area light. And this is still going to be pretty dark until I start cranking up that area light's intensity. Intensity 5,000. There we go. 12,000. All right, that looks pretty neat. Okay, so now I'm kind of more emphasizing on Andy, and then the rest of it is really not seen. If I wanted to hide some of this background, some things you may not have been aware of inside Maya, if I add, let's say, an area light, let's say I want to get rid of all the stuff that's way back here. I haven't tested this in Arnold. I guess I should have tested this first, but whatever. If I take my intensity and I make this negative, yep, it won't work. Never mind. Maya lights, if I make them negative, will subtract the lighting from the area. So let's put a point light over here, negative intensity. Whoops. Let's see if that got any darker in that area. It did not get any darker over in that area. Nope. Never mind. We can't do that in Arnold. Never mind. If anything, I could put a item over there and have the lighting just get darker. Or the material I add to this, AI standard surface, I can click on the color swatch, go to ramp, change this to a circular ramp, which means it's going to be one color in the middle and one color on the end. So now I have this white color right in the center where Andy is, or a gray color. And then way on the distances, I see black. And then this thing, I will turn this off so I don't see that render. And then that should give us a pretty dark background. Let's see. Well, maybe a little bit more, and I think I have my reflections on, so let's turn those reflections down as well. Let me grab my ground if I can. There it is. Let's turn this off. There we go. So now we have this a bit darker. It just kind of fades off into nothingness. I probably could also go to my geometry, go to opacity, and I could probably put the same ramp on that and make this a circular ramp. Let's hit stop for a second. Nope, it doesn't want to play nice. I thought I would read that and then just transparency that out, but it does not want to do that. Opacity, yeah. So it's white in the middle. Nope, it's not reading it right, whatever. I do, but it still should make, because it's on opacity, that whole area should just be invisible. But it works, I guess. Maybe I can turn my dome light down just a little bit more, and that'll assist. 0.2. There we go, that's better. Now I can take my area light up to, I'm just going to take the exposure up to like 0.5. 1. Oh, too much, 0.25. And also, do I have shadows on this area light? I should. Yep, I have shadows. I'm going to lower the shadows a little bit. There we go. Cool. Don't want Andy to have like weird, ugly shadows underneath either. All right, so now for the turntable part, I'm going to go to one side of Andy like this. Maybe pick a different focal length for this camera. Actually, where's my turntable camera? There it is. Let's say 120. Make sure I pick the right camera. I have the wrong camera selected again. Grab that. One, 2, 0. There we go. Good. Then I'm going to go to my animation, go to visualize, go to create turntable. And I'm going to double this. So I have 390 frames. So anyone want to guess what that's going to be? 780. And then I'm always doing this the wrong way, but we'll just do counterclockwise and then fix it later. So hit play. Whoop. That was the wrong direction, and I had the wrong thing selected. I need to pick an item, that I'm going to be spinning around. Try that again. 780, counterclockwise. There we go. Now hit play. That is the correct direction, counterclockwise. Okay, and then just like we've done before, I think on the Game of Thrones thing, I want to take my turntable camera, group here, and make that linear. There we go. So now we go from one side to the other, and then I would again just render this out. Some additional things that maybe you want to add to yours too. If you've been in the modeling class, we do this, but in this class we haven't done anything like this. Going into this AOVs and adding a custom AO shader. Selecting your AOV node, attribute editor somewhere. There it is. Going to my shader, going to utility, nope. Going to shader, there it is, ambient occlusion. What this is going to do is it's going to give us a bit more contact shadow in those areas. Okay, this is way too grayscale, so we're going to take the far clipping down, let's say 10. Let's say 5, 2. Maybe I'll pull the fall off up a little bit. There we go. That's too much on the fall off. 1. Yeah, 1 should be good there. Okay, so what this is going to do is you would, when you render this out, you'll get a beauty pass, which is nice and pretty, just like we saw here. And then you'll also get this, which is an AO pass. You stack them in After Effects, you multiply the top one on top of it, and then you just get more depth. If you look at where Andy's foot is here, it really doesn't look like Andy is seated on top of that. It looks like Andy's foot is kind of floating. But when you add this AO, that will make it appear that it's actually not doing that. Just to show you, I'm going to save this. I'll save it as a multi-layer EXR. P drive 2540, yes, that's fine. Andy, walk still. I'm just going to bring this one image into After Effects just so you can see it. Character rig, images, Andy, walk still. And I'm going to drag this down onto a new composition. Okay, so this is Andy, and you can see it looks pretty floaty, right? I'm going to go to my effect. I'm going to go to 3D channel. I'm going to say extractor. And I'm going to click here and extract my ambient occlusion. So this takes this layer and extracts the ambient occlusion out of it. I'm going to duplicate it, take the bottom one, delete that, take this top one, set it to multiply. And now you can see Andy's foot actually feels a little bit more locked in there. We are getting kind of like a weird halo though around Andy. Probably because of the motion blur. I didn't like that. I think it's passable. It looks more like just like a rim light. Yeah. So you definitely feel a lot more contact here, connection there when you have that on. Okay. If it didn't come in an EXR, it would have separated them. You'd have two files. You do the same thing, except you don't need this extractor bit. Everything's just locked into one. Play with, nope, not that. Not that. Cool. All right, so then for this one, obviously you're turning in a movie. It's either going to be the side-by-side, front and side view, or you're going to have this 180 turntable rendering. It seems pretty simple, and it is if you just take it step by step. Don't try to animate everything all at once. Don't go to frame 0 or 1 and then start walk cycle, like legs, arms, head, all that bit, and then going into it, and it doesn't work. Especially for your first walk cycle, it should look nice and smooth, and you can see that this one looks actually pretty smooth as it's walking. I definitely could use some work too. I only rotated the shoulders left and right, but they actually come up and down just slightly. Same thing with the hips. They actually go up and down a little bit, not fully, but a little bit. Cool. Questions on this yet?